A gun salute is taking place in cities across the United Kingdom to honour Britain's Queen Elizabeth II, with one round fired to mark each year of her life. Now, Parliament is holding a special session to honour the country's longest-serving monarch. Now, let's get the very latest. We're now joined by our correspondent, Giles Gibson. Giles, thank you so much for your time. Now, I understand you're outside Buckingham Palace. Of course, tributes continue to pour in for the late Queen. Talk to us about what is happening currently now.
That's right. We're about 200-300 metres away from the gates of Buckingham Palace, and I can tell you there is just a constant stream of people going up and down the Mall here, and they are going to pay their respects to Queen Elizabeth II. I can tell you much closer to the palace, there is a queue of people just waiting in line, trying to get up to the gates of the palace itself to make a simple act of tribute, a simple act of respect, and to lay a bouquet of flowers outside the gates. I also just want to show you this front page from one of the major newspapers here in the United Kingdom, the Daily Mirror. It normally has red on the front, but they've gone for an entirely black cover out of respect to the Queen, and you can see there just that simple message on the front page of that newspaper, thank you. And that is really the sense that we are getting here just a few hundred metres away from Buckingham Palace, that people want to come down, yes, lay a bouquet of flowers, but also say thank you to the Queen for her decades of service.
Now, we understand, of course, that King Charles III landed a few moments ago at a military airbase. Now, he's expected to, address the British nation tonight. Talk to us about what the expectation is.
That's right. We got our first glimpse of not Prince Charles, but King Charles III, a very familiar face, but somebody who is now in a very unfamiliar role for him. He is now the monarch after preparing for that for so many decades. We got a glimpse of him as he left Balmoral Castle, and then again as he was boarding a plane at Aberdeen Airport in Scotland, around an hour's drive away from the castle. He has since headed south and, as you say, has now landed at a Royal Air Force base just outside London and is now making his way into the capital. And of course, Buckingham Palace, London, is a place where he has spent almost his entire life, most of his life, but he is now coming back to it with this brand new title, His Majesty the King. And yes, in about 4 hours' time, we're going to have King Charles III addressing the nation. I think we can expect him to make a lot of comments about his mother, a sort of tribute, if you like. But we will also see perhaps a message to the nation, trying to calm them, perhaps, trying to show that he is leading this country in these many days of mourning that we've got still to come.
Now, of course, we know, during, the Queen's time, the British Queen's time, King Charles was obviously a prince then, became front and center, particularly in the latter years of the Queen. Of course, another person who's probably, being watched very closely is Prince William. Talk to us about where he is at the moment and, if he's left Balmoral as well, especially if you look at what's going to be happening tomorrow with that Accession Council.
That's right. So the Accession Council is made up of members of the Privy Council. That is a group of very senior politicians who are nominated to that council, and their role is basically to advise the monarch on different duties of state, different matters of state. But they are going to be taking on an even more important role on Saturday here in the UK, Saturday morning local time, when they officially proclaim King Charles III as the new monarch. Under sort of British law, under the way all of this works, he does immediately become the king upon the death of his mother, so he is already King Charles III. But this is, if you like, a constitutional step that needs to be taken for him to be officially proclaimed the king. You mentioned Prince William there. He was also, of course, at Balmoral Castle by the side of his grandmother in her final hours, and he is now stepping into a new role. For so long, he's been the third in line to the throne, but he will now be, or second in line to the throne, excuse me, and he will now be stepping into his father's shoes. Eventually, we expect, this has not been confirmed yet, eventually he will take on the title of Prince of Wales, which his father, of course, has now vacated as he steps into his mother's very big shoes.
In fact, Giles, you won't see it now, but we are currently showing those visuals, of the motorcade making its way. And that's, of course, King Charles III's motorcade making its way through London. Of course, shortly after his arrival, he was seen, as I said earlier on, moments ago, landing at a military base near London. And, of course, this is after spending Thursday evening at Balmoral Castle in Scotland. Talk to us about who he's likely to meet before he makes that speech. We understand, of course, he has to have that important meeting with British Prime Minister Liz Truss sometime today. What is likely to happen just before he addresses the nation?
Well, that's right. We are in a completely new era here in the UK, because not only do we have a new monarch on the throne, we also have a brand new Prime Minister. Liz Truss took over as UK Prime Minister just a few days ago. And of course, one of the Queen's final duties was to invite Liz Truss to become the Prime Minister when she travelled up to see her at Balmoral Castle. We saw that photograph of the two of them together. The Queen was on her feet. She was looking a bit frail. She was holding a wooden walking stick, but she was smiling, and she was on her feet greeting Liz Truss as she invited her to form a government and become the new Prime Minister. So what we expect to see in the next few hours, of course, all this will happen by...
All right, that was our correspondent there, Giles Gibson, just outside of Buckingham Palace. Of course, as you've seen, just behind him, so many people paying their last respects to the Queen, laying wreaths and flowers and paying their tributes, and obviously also saying a thank you to her. But let's continue here now. King Charles will be officially proclaimed Britain's new monarch at a meeting of the Accession Council at St James Palace on Saturday. The council meeting, which has two parts, proclaims the new sovereign and sees the king sign an oath to uphold the security of the church in Scotland. Now, following the meeting, there will be the principal proclamation from the balcony at St James's Palace, with other announcements of the new monarch being made across the United Kingdom and of course in the city of London. Let's take a look at the journey of King Charles III. Kaelihle Khumalo has more for us.
Britain's Prince Charles was born at Buckingham Palace on November 14, 1948, the first child of then Princess Elizabeth and Philip, Duke of Edinburgh. He started his education at Cheam Preparatory School just outside London, a boarding school that his father attended as well. In 1962, he continued his education at Gordonstoun School in a remote area of the Scottish Highlands. In 1967, he went on to Cambridge University, where he studied archaeology and anthropology during his first year, later switching to history and graduating in 1970. At the age of 20, he was invested as the 21st Prince of Wales.
I, Charles, Prince of Wales, do become your liege man of life and limb, and of earthly worship. And faith and truth I will bear unto thee, to live and die against all manner of folks.
After speculation about his marriage plans, Buckingham Palace finally announced Charles' engagement to Lady Diana Spencer in February 1981. The 32-year-old prince captured a blushing bride in the 20-year-old Diana and crowned their affair with a dazzling wedding ceremony at St Paul's Cathedral 6 months later.
Difficult to find the right sort of word, isn't it, really? Just delighted and happy. And I'm amazed that she's been brave enough to take me on.
Diana seemed the perfect choice as a royal wife. She was pretty, charming, and often referred to as people's princess. Their marriage appeared happy, and the line of succession to the throne was assured with the birth of Prince William in June 1982, and a second son, Prince Harry, was born in September 1984. Charles and Diana were divorced in 1996 after years of acrimonious marital problems. Diana blamed Charles for his refusal to end his affair with his long-term lover, Camilla Parker Bowles.
It is announced from Buckingham Palace that with regret, the Prince and Princess of Wales have decided to separate.
A year after the divorce, Diana was killed in a car crash in Paris, along with her lover and their driver. Charles, William and Harry were spending their summer holiday in Scotland with the Queen and Prince Philip when the news was broken to them. After Diana's death, Charles and Camilla's relationship became more public, and the heir to the throne and the newly titled Duchess of Cornwall were married in 2005. By his 60th birthday in 2008, Charles's approval rating had improved, and he gradually won back public sympathy and was seen as a thoughtful and caring single parent. Prince Philip, who was Queen Elizabeth II's husband for more than 7 decades and helped modernize the British monarchy and steer the royal family through the repeated crises, died last year.
My dear Papa was a very special person who, I think above all else, would have been amazed by the reaction and the touching things that have been said about him.
Charles attended the recent Commonwealth gathering in Rwanda on behalf of the late Queen Elizabeth. He also named a gorilla in Rwanda. The role of king no longer remains a distant prospect for the oldest Prince of Wales and longest-serving heir to the throne in British history. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
All right, as you can see on that screen, that is King Charles III meeting British nationals for the first time as king. Of course, he's just landed in London after spending some time in Balmoral. I'm joined now by our international news editor, Sophie Mukwena, in studio. Sophie, talk to us through these visuals. Of course, this is an important moment, not only for King Charles III, but also for those British nationals who are there to mourn, of course, the death of Queen Elizabeth II.
Yes, when we watch those visuals, you remember in 1952 when Queen Elizabeth arrived in London. You'd recall that when her father passed on, she was in Kenya where she was on holiday and had to fly back and cut short her trip to Kenya because her father had passed on and she had to take over. When she left Kenya, she was a queen. On arrival in London, we saw similar pictures, people lining the streets welcoming her. But above all, she then met the then Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Winston Churchill. And now you see the incoming king, Prince Charles, King Charles now meeting and greeting people. But also when I look at that picture, I also remember when Lady Diana passed on, when the prince, then Prince Charles, and Queen Elizabeth went out to greet many people outside, even taking the flowers. And now you see King Charles continuing with the tradition. He has just landed in London. He was in Balmoral. He spent the night in Balmoral yesterday. When the Queen, we are told, passed on, he was there, and now he is back in London. We expect him later tonight to deliver a message. We saw a very short message yesterday announcing the passing on of the Queen of England. And now tonight we expect him to say something, and I guess the message will revolve around his relationship with the late Queen Elizabeth.
In fact, just looking at those visuals, I mean, you see he's calm. He's about to, as you've said, address the nation at 6 o'clock tonight. But do we understand at this point if he's going to be meeting with the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, before he addresses the nation, given the fact that she's the one that actually announced at the House of Commons earlier today about this address to the nation?
Yes. He will definitely meet the head of government, the Prime Minister, Liz Truss, and tomorrow then he will address the nation, and it will then be official that he is the king. And therefore, we expect him to meet Liz Truss this afternoon or later today. as I pointed out, that's exactly what the late Queen Elizabeth did in 1952.
In fact, Sophie, thank you for that. Let's bring in now this our correspondent who is live for us in Britain. A memorial service, of course, will be held at St Cathedral this afternoon in honor of Queen Elizabeth II. The Queen died peacefully at Balmoral yesterday. Queen Elizabeth II was the longest reigning monarch in British history and the world's oldest head of state. Now, our correspondent Ross Cullen is standing by for us. Ross, thank you so much for your time. Now, we are looking at these visuals of the King, King Charles, of course, King Charles III, greeting Britons who are mourning the late Queen, of course. What are you seeing at the moment, and where are you at the moment, Ross? Just take us through what is currently happening there.
Yes, you're right. A short time ago, King Charles III and Queen Camilla arrived back in London after leaving northeast Scotland. They had spent the night at Balmoral Castle, where the Queen passed away on Thursday, arriving back into London, and they were met by the official royal car, which has driven them to Buckingham Palace, where we're seeing those photos now for the viewers of King Charles just saying hello to mourners. The overall atmosphere is subdued. Some people have been saying God save the King when he arrived at Buckingham Palace, but more people are wanting to pass on their memories and just their condolences to King Charles, because that is a man who's lost his mother at the centre of this, a very public grief, but also a private grief of King Charles and other members of his family losing their mother or their grandmother, for example, for Princes William and Harry. What we expect now is the Prime Minister will be meeting with King Charles for an audience with Liz Truss. After that, Prince Charles, now King Charles, we have to get used to calling him. It's been Prince Charles for so long. King Charles III will be meeting the Earl Marshal. Now, he is in charge of going through the choreography for the coming days and weeks, and Prince Charles, now King Charles, will be signing off on that. And then later this evening, just over to my left, St Paul's Cathedral will be the location for a special memorial service on this, the first day after the death of Queen Elizabeth II.
Now, talk to us about the immediate plans over the next few days, you know, starting with the memorial service that is expected to happen either tonight or, tomorrow morning. Of course, tonight is an all-important nation address, whereas the King, firstly, King Charles III, will for the first time as a monarch be addressing the nation. What is likely to happen? What are we likely to see over the next 10 days, as you say?
Well, that's likely to be a pre-recorded address by the King that will be played to the British public at 6 p.m. British time this evening, and then there will be a memorial service after that for politicians and some more than 1,000 members of the public as well able to attend. Just a small memorial service to set the tone really for the coming week to 10 days before the grand state funeral. What we do understand, though, is that on Saturday, so tomorrow, the new king will be officially proclaimed. There's something called the Accession Council, which has to happen, where the new monarch is officially announced, and for the first time this will be broadcast on television. So this new king and the former queen are also participating in events for the first time on television. Tomorrow, Prince Charles will become King Charles officially on television at the Accession Council. In 1953, when the Queen was crowned, she became Queen the year before when her father died, but she was crowned in 1953. For the first time ever, a royal coronation took place live on television. So that's what's going to be happening on Saturday, with the Prince acclaimed, and then there is rehearsals for the funeral. The Queen's coffin will have to move from the Scottish castle, where she lies at the moment, to Edinburgh, the Scottish capital, and then after that coming down to London to be met by the Prime Minister, and then she will lie in state. And for 23 hours a day, for 2 or 3 days, members of the public will be able to file past the coffin and pay their respects, just spend a quiet moment saying goodbye to the Queen before the funeral, which we expect in about 10 days' time.
Ross, thank you so much for that. Ross Cullen just giving us, a perspective in terms of what is transpiring, what we are currently seeing. And there you have it, those visuals coming through King Charles III with Queen Camilla, and of course she's Queen Consort. I still have Sophie Mugona with me in studio as we are looking at these visuals that are coming to you live from London. Sophie, I mean, just moments ago, Liz Truss was paying tribute to the late Queen Elizabeth II, and of course saying that as King Charles III comes in, to assume his role, that they will be lending their support to him and they will be of service to the King.
Yes, indeed. The sentiments shared by the current Prime Minister was willing to work with the new King. But we know that when she was part of the Liberal Party, she was against the monarchy and she was pushing that it must be abolished. And that is why on Tuesday, when she went to Balmoral, where the Queen did the formalities in terms of confirming her as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, many people were asking questions in terms of when they have that meeting, what kind of conversation are going to ensue in terms of her beliefs, and almost like finally you met your enemy, in a sense that she didn't subscribe to the whole pomp and ceremony and the extravaganza of the monarchy.
International news editor at the SABC, Sophie Mugana, thank you so much for your analysis.